Hello, everybody, and welcome in to the MVP show for January 24th, 2021. It is Conference Championship Sunday, a huge Sunday, probably the biggest up to this point in a long time for at least our show, for us in terms of interest. It's a huge week. As you could tell from Dan Passante and Brennan Miller's garb that they're wearing, and I'm John Vicari, this is huge. We have two representatives in championship weekend, which hasn't happened in a while. I mean, the Packers were there last year, but to have two games where there is not just a betting interest or a rooting interest just for it, a passionate, enthralled in this game interest in both Dan and Brennan, it makes this day big. And this is the reason you're tuning in. If you're watching right now, you realize you're getting perspective from Dan with the Bills and Brennan with the Packers, where you can't get anywhere else, where people are covering it, but not following the team all season like these two have. And that's why I can't wait for today's show and for today in general. And of course, where else are we going to start? We're going to start with Conference Championship Sunday. Bills versus Chiefs in the AFC Championship. NFC Championship is the Bucks and the Packers. Dan, we'll start with you breaking down this Bills-Chiefs game. You've been waiting your lifetime for a game like this. The first time you've ever seen them in the AFC Championship. In fact, the last time they were in the AFC Championship, it was against the Chiefs, and that was in the year 1994 in the 93-94 season. The Bills won that game. What do you say on today? I know you've been pretty much holding in your optimism for the season and taking it one game at a time, and you're not at the ultimate stage yet, but you're at the penultimate, and that is the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about this game probably all season. Well, not all season, but after the Bills got off to a good start, and they started winning back in October, I was thinking, it might come down to the Bills-Chiefs in the AFC Championship. And, I'm not the only one that thought that. A lot of people also thought that. But, here we are. And it's pretty wild for Buffalo to think that a team that could not win a playoff game for the past 2 years is finally one game away from the Super Bowl. I know all the fans are very excited about that. But as far as today's game goes, it's hopefully, I think everyone thinks it's going to be a really, really close one. Both teams very evenly matched. And, we can talk about the health of Patrick Mahomes, which is really going to determine a lot. But we'll see at game time really where he is. I don't know if you guys picked up on this. This is a Scarface Josh Allen today I got on with Bills Mafia. Got to represent that, definitely. But huge game for the Bills franchise today.
Yeah, and in terms of just looking at this matchup, Dan, you touched on the key point, and that is Patrick Mahomes' health. Because it all starts and ends with the Chiefs' offense with Patrick Mahomes. And as we saw last week in the game versus the Kansas City versus Cleveland, I should say, it was Chad Henne, of all people, who had to finish it out, showing that anything is possible. I knew I was going to slip up there. Had a huge third down run to get it a 4th and 1, and then gutsy play calling as it was a throw to Tyreek Hill that moved the sticks and solidified the win for the Kansas City Chiefs. But is Mahomes 100%? He got concussed and was eliminated from, or I guess taken out, I should say, from the game against the Browns. And Dan, as you know, Buffalo's pass rush is nothing to scoff at. So Mahomes, although he might not be pressured at a rate he did versus Cleveland because there's more talent on their D-line, the Bills aren't going to try to make an easy day on Mahomes in the pocket. So that's going to be huge. And I just want to get your thoughts on another perspective. And that's the fact that there was an early season, in both of these games, by the way, in the AFC and the NFC Championship, these games happened this season. And it was a 9-point loss for the Bills against the Chiefs. So I want your thoughts, Dan, on what went wrong really for the Bills in that game, and how did they reverse it today? Because pretty much it's the same matchup except for a lot more at stake. And also, Kansas City, although they're young and Patrick Mahomes is 25 years old, this is still the Chiefs team that went to the Super Bowl and won last year. So they have playoff experience more than any team that's in the playoffs, that are left in the playoffs of the Final Four. So what's the key for the Bills' victory today?
Well, I think in that first game, Buffalo gave up a ton of yards on the ground, and I just pulled up some of the stats. Edwards-Helaire on the Chiefs ran for 161 yards. Mahomes ran for 36. There was a lot of running in that game. No receiver had over 100 yards for the Chiefs. I remember that from that game. And obviously the Bills' run defense has gotten a lot better. We saw it last week with Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. They were able to handle those guys. They game planned for that. The defense has really, really improved for Buffalo this year. And I really think the turning point for them was the Cardinals game when they gave up the gigantic throw to DeAndre Hopkins. That was the turning point this season for Buffalo. They really decided this is, we got to get serious now. We can't allow things like that to happen. I think it was a really good thing that happened to them. And the defense is a lot better at this point for Buffalo. But yeah, I mean, if they can game plan to try and move Patrick Mahomes around, that's going to be the X factor in this game. I think a lot of people believe that if he's 100%, the Chiefs should be the favorite in this game. They're at home. They're the defending champions. But if he's not, that makes things really interesting. And can anything be possible in the AFC Championship game? I'm not ready to say that. I don't believe Chad Henne will beat the Bills on, an entire game. But hey, again, he showed how great he was in the last closing moments of last week.
Another point, you touched on the Bills defense, and I looked through the research in terms of how how the Bills did against opposing teams' tight ends, and it wasn't great. And they have to match up against Travis Kelce, who arguably, maybe some people think George Kittle, but arguably Travis Kelce is the best tight end in football today. He was pretty much stopped the last time they played Buffalo in terms of yards, only 55, but he did have 2 touchdowns. Do you think, because it's been a liability all season, that the Bills' defense can contain Travis Kelce?
Well, they got a game plan for that. That's going to be hard for them. You see sometimes, Trey White as a safety, he gets matched up with tight ends quite a bit. And Trey's not very big. We saw that against the Colts. I forget who the name of their tight end is for the Colts, but there was one throw where they threw it to him. He just kind of fell on Trey and got the first down. He's not huge. So that's something they definitely have to try and keep the ball away from him. And that's a lot easier for me to say than to actually do. But I think not having Patrick Mahomes potentially be 100% or have him move around would be something helpful for them. But again, who knows what his health is? We'll see that when the game starts. But that's something the Buffalo is really, hopefully, I'm sure they thought about it all week and they have a better plan than I do, hopefully.
Yeah. In terms of the matchup, I mentioned Mahomes is age 25. Allen's 24, and this could be for the next couple of years. I don't want to, get ahead of ourselves here, but it could be the next chapter of great AFC quarterbacks going at it for the next couple of years. Both of these teams are really good, and I don't think it's going to be a fall off next year. It wasn't like they bought in for this year. I know Kansas City's going to have to pay some more pieces and maybe take chunks out of their defense going forward. But potentially this could be an AFC playoff matchup for the next couple of years. So definitely interesting. And the first one is today. And your final thoughts, Dan, before we go into the NFC Championship. And we'll pick these games as we get closer to 1 o'clock in terms of our thoughts, and we'll give you our perspective on how the final score will go. In terms, Dan, of this game, what do you think is the thing that can't go wrong? And because we talked about optimism earlier on the show. What is your feeling going into this game? Do you feel confident the Bills can win, or is it just a nervousness like every other game? Because I saw, and you'll probably get to this maybe later on in the show, but I saw on a video yesterday optimism from you as a Bills fan that I have not seen for as long as I've known you. So I want to get your current state of mind.
Well, this is the greatest Bills season that I think most young Bills fans have ever seen. So if they, regardless of the outcome today, really not going to be upset with this season. They made it to the AFC Championship game. And the future is very bright for Buffalo. So I definitely won't be upset. I mean, I guess I'd be disappointed if they lose today, but I won't be upset with the season. I don't think any fan in their right mind can say that about the Bills this year. But Josh Allen needs to stay on the field. Against the Colts, you saw that they were able to put together long offensive drives and keep him off the field, and that's a problem. So if the Bills can switch that around, if their offense can really control the tempo of the game, that's something that they could hopefully do and plan for. I think that's going to be a huge point for them. And I mean, as far as the game pick goes, we will get to that later.
Yeah.
I don't think that any Bills fan in their right mind would say they're going to be upset if the Bills lose today. They've had a great season.
They have, and both teams have 15 wins on the season. The Bills, one extra loss because they had to play one extra game in terms of in the playoffs, and So 15-3 record, and as Dan mentioned, probably the best most definitely the best season that he's seen in his lifetime, and could all culminate today with a trip to the Super Bowl. But now we'll transition to the first game today, and that's the NFC Championship. And maybe you could see Brennan, and he was muted because I think he was pretty much singing, even though it looks like lip singing. Yeah. I was about to say, I think it was muted. I was hoping. But Brennan is hyped. And Brennan is hyped for a good reason, and that's because the Packers are in now their second consecutive NFC Championship. They're fourth in 7 seasons. And not to take too much wind out of your sail there, Brennan, but Aaron Rodgers looking for only his second trip to the Super Bowl, but it is there, and it'll be 10 years after his first one and his first Super Bowl victory as well. And this is a matchup that happened earlier in the season. Aaron Rodgers struggled in it, but Tampa Bay has also had really, I would say, the most inconsistent season of any team in the NFL, maybe besides the Bears in terms of 1 week they are firing on all cylinders, and then the next week their offense can't stimulate anything. But we're here, the NFC Championship. Tampa took care of who they had to get here, and Green Bay in their one game against Los Angeles looked impressive. It's going to be 20 degrees in Lambeau, chance of snow showers. Brennan, how you feeling? I already know the answer to that question, but I know you're feeling good. Give us a Packers versus Bucks preview.
I'm feeling great, John. I am so excited. It doesn't get any better than this. We got a remake of Green and Yellow. Will Tanucci, no way, came back out, dropped an updated version, and any song where Matt LaFleur, Aaron Rodgers, Mason Crosby, David Bakhtiari, any of those guys who are mentioned in a rap song, I'm in. Absolutely 100%. I don't know. I think we just have to turn to the greatest lyricist of our generation when we take a look at this Packers team in Lil Wayne. I mean, let's take a look at this song right here. A-Rod got offside, free play, absolutely. Aaron Rodgers, the best in the NFL, getting players offside, getting those free plays. Wide receivers know what to do. That's going to play a huge factor today when we talk about this game. Tom Brady versus Aaron Rodgers. That's the matchup that everyone wants to see in these playoffs. We saw Brady go out and beat another legend in Drew Brees last week. But it's going to be another one here in the NFC Championship with him against Rodgers. I already mentioned Hail Mary. Yeah, Aaron to Devontae. Absolutely. That's going to be the connection all day long. Last week, we saw Devontae Adams go against Pro Football Focus's #1 ranked wide receiver, or cornerback, in Jalen Ramsey, and he made him look absolutely silly. Did Devontae go over 100 yards? No. Did he absolutely toast Jalen Ramsey on 3 or 4 separate routes to get wide open and catch passes? Yes. Devontae Adams is the best wide receiver in the NFL. I'm sorry, Dan. But when you have the best quarterback in the NFL who's going to win MVP, throwing to the best wide receiver in the NFL, it doesn't matter who's playing on him. He's going to get open. He's going to catch the ball. Let's see. What's the next line with a name drop here? Throw past to Taillon, simple Madden science. Absolutely. Robert Taillon arguably should be a Pro Bowler. I said, I'm sorry to Dan. John, I'm sorry for that one. Evan Ingram should not be in the Pro Bowl. It should be Robert Taillon, leading all tight ends in touchdown receptions. Rolling out the pocket, Bakhtiari blocking. Bakhtiari's not in the game today. He's not playing. He tore his ACL a few weeks ago, but the Green Bay Packers still have the best offensive line left in the playoffs. I said it last week when we were talking about the Packers versus the Rams, and the fact that the Packers offensive line is what the game came down to. Elton Jenkins, a second-year pro out of Mississippi State playing left guard, absolutely dominated Aaron Donald. Was he injured? Yes, I'll give him that. Donald had 1 quarterback pressure the entire game. Elton Jenkins made him look absolutely silly last week. And the offensive line of the Packers with Corey Linsley at center and an all-pro is going to make a big difference in this game. I get it. The Buccaneers have Vita Vea coming back. He's one of the best defensive run stoppers in the NFL. But I don't really think that matters. If they can't get pressure on Rodgers with the offensive line, I think that comes out and is a big factor in the game. Pack them up. This is what I'm going to do all 3 in a row here. Pack them up. I know Preston Smith going to tackle him. I know Zadarius Smith going to back him up. And you know Darnell Savage, bro. You got all 3 players right there. 3 of the best players on the Packers defense. You got Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith. Smith brothers coming from both sides of that defensive line. I think they're going to be able to put pressure on. I think that that's going to be a huge factor in the game. Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers are top 2 in the league in touchdowns thrown with no pressure applied. So the offensive lines have been very good for both sides. If you can apply pressure to Tom Brady, it makes it a lot more difficult for him to throw. I think the Packers are going to blitz a lot today. I genuinely think that they are going to try and get as much pressure on Tom Brady as possible, and that falls on the shoulders of Za'Darius and Preston Smith. It's going to be a big game. I mean, we saw last week Rashawn Gary had literally the biggest game of his career. I mean, you look at Pro Football Focus, you look at just the counting stats as well. Rashawn Gary applied more pressure to a quarterback than he had in any game in his career up to this point. He's 2 years in, so not a huge sample size, but at the same time, you love to see that out of a young guy who at this point, he was your first round pick 2 years ago, and he hadn't really done a lot since. I mean, he's good in the defensive line, but, needed to take another step. Darnell Savage, bro. I mean, Darnell Savage is one of the best. The Packers corners and safeties at this point are one of the top units in the league. And to say that this season, after 2 or 3 years ago, where the Packers cornerbacks and defensive backs were probably in the high 20s, maybe even early 30s as far as defensive proficiency, is absolutely huge. Okay, I'm gonna stop going through lyrics here because the name drops just continue to come and come and come. I think the Green Bay Packers are very, very good. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are very, very good. But I think the Packers have more all-star, more all-pro power at a lot of different positions. It's going to be important for the Packers to win one-on-one battles. I already mentioned the offensive line of the Packers, top two in the league. The Browns are better. Top offensive line remaining in the playoffs. I think it's going to be important for them to win against the Buccaneers defensive line, who is also very, very proficient. I believe top 10 in the league. But then again, so were the Rams last week. So that obviously bodes well. The Packers can score the ball. That's the most important point. The Packers can score. It's going to come down to whether or not the Buccaneers defense can stop them from scoring. I don't think this is going to be as much of a shootout as a lot of people are expecting it to be. But I think it is going to come down to the fact that the Buccaneers defense is going to have to step up. We saw it in week 6. These two teams have already played. The Buccaneers already won. The Packers went down and scored on their first drive of the game and then didn't score other than a field goal for the rest of the game. So it did come down to the Buccaneers defense. I think it's the same thing that happens this week. But I think the Packers have a good chance of being able to move the ball on the Bucs and being able to put up at least more points than they did week 6.
Yeah, and you look at this game, and we talked about it earlier, how there's in the regular season matchups between both the Bills and the Chiefs and the Packers and the Bucs. And I think more so for the NFC side, the game won't follow suit. I don't see the Packers just laying an egg offensively, but as Brennan mentioned, Tampa's defense is going to have to step up. And I know we've heard all year about how Tampa has all these weapons. They'll be without Antonio Brown for today's game, but they have all these weapons. But I would favor Green Bay in terms of what they could do offensively in terms of variety. And I think even though it is a battle of old quarterbacks, maybe not to the extent that Brady versus Breeze was last week, Rodgers 37, Brady 43, Rodgers has looked better this season, and I think that is a factor of what it's going to come down to today. One more question, Brennan, because you touched on it, but I want to see in-depth thoughts on this. You stopped last week in the Rams a pretty good defensive line, but the Packers O-line, which has had injuries this season, is going against Jason Pierre-Paul, who had his best season this year besides his season versus when he was a New York Giant in 2011. He's having a career renaissance, even though he keeps getting in off-the-field trouble in terms of, not in bad stuff, just in terms of injuries. He's gotten in, I believe it was a car crash, and everyone remembers the finger incident in the 4th of July firework disaster. But JPB has been a guy who's gotten to the quarterback all season long. Do you think the Packers O-line is going to do or has the capability to protect Aaron Rodgers for 4 quarters against the Tampa Bay pass rush?
Yeah, I think there's going to be there's a few overarching ideas that kind of lead into this game where both teams are very, very strong. It's the fact that the Bucs defensive line is very good. As you mentioned, Jason Pierre-Paul, the Bucs get Vita Vea back, like I said earlier. I think the Packers offensive line is very, very good. Elton Jenkins should arguably be a all-pro. He is a Pro Bowler. Corey Lindsey is an all-pro at center. On the right side of the line, not as strong, but I don't think you have to worry about that as much. At left tackle, Billy Turner has stepped up for David Bakhtiari, who is an All-Pro, who is a Pro Bowler, actually has more Pro Bowls than he does All-Pro appearances, so riddle me that. Bakhtiari, obviously, you miss him, but I think that the Green Bay Packers offensive line, like I have said numerous times, is top 2 in the league and the best offensive line remaining in the playoffs. It's something that we don't appreciate as much because obviously they don't get as many stats. I mean, when you go on Madden and you click on lineman stats, it's sacks allowed and pancakes, so kind of 2 extremes. You don't qualify how good they are at run blocking, how good they are at being able to open a pocket for Aaron Rodgers. Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, I said it earlier, have thrown the most touchdown passes with a clean pocket out of anyone in the NFL this season. That just means their offensive lines are working. I think the Packers' offensive line is going to be able to stay up and be able to keep Rodgers on his feet to be able to distribute the ball to Davante Adams, who inevitably is going to get open in this game. The other overarching thing that I think is going to play a huge factor in this is that the Buccaneers have caused more turnovers than any other team in the NFL. The Green Bay, in the last 6 weeks, let me qualify that. They've caused the most turnovers in the last 6 weeks of any team in the NFL. The Green Bay Packers have the least amount of turnovers out of any team in the NFL in that same span. So it's going to be a huge game as far as who controls time of possession, who controls when you have the ball, and what you do when you have the ball to run out the clock. Like I said, I don't think this is going to be a shootout. I don't think this is going to be Aaron Rodgers gets a ball. He throws it deep to Davante Adams. Davante Adams scores on a 1-minute drive for the Packers. They give the ball back. Brady throws deep to Mike Evans or any one of his wide receivers or tight ends that he has as far as weapons go. And then they're able to score in 2 minutes, and then they give the ball to the Packers, and the same thing happens. I don't think that's how this game is going to go. I think the game is going to come down to the running games. I think the game is going to come down to the ability for the offensive line to get a push and move the defensive line of each side, whether it be the Packers offensive line or the Bucs offensive line, being able to get a push. I think that's what the game comes down to. And I think the Packers offensive line is stronger. And again, I'm not going to give a pick, but again, like Dan said earlier, you probably know who I'm going to pick. But I think it comes down to the individual strengths, and I think that the Packers offensive line is stronger than the Buccaneers offensive line.
One last note on both championship games. It's the first time in NFL history that all 4 teams have averaged at least 29 points per game. So maybe a lot of high-scoring affairs. Brennan doesn't think so in the NFC Championship, but you could see in both games a shootout if it comes down to that. And I think it would favor Green Bay if it comes down to a shootout, and unfortunately, Dan, Kansas City if it were to come down to a shootout, even though the Bills' offense, like all of these, have been excellent this season. So now we'll transition into what was the sporting event of yesterday, and that was UFC 257, and the main event specifically. And I thought we were just going to talk on this. It wasn't going to be, extensive. It was going to be really pretty brief because Conor McGregor was again going to have another stepping stone to build his legacy upon, and then it'd be interesting because he would have the upper hand in calling out anyone he wanted to fight next in terms of UFC or boxing or what have you. Instead, Louisiana native Dustin Poirier upset Conor McGregor in TKO in the second round, and it was a fight after the first round I thought was going to go McGregor's way. McGregor was working the shoulder strikes, and in the judges' scorecard, won the first round. In the second, completely different story. Poirier utilized calf kicks to weaken Conor McGregor's leg, flipped the sides in terms of Poirier getting off the fence and putting McGregor on the fence, and then a big left hook landed. McGregor pretty much faltered after that, and then a couple combo strikes, and he fell, and then it was over as the ref and Herb Dean stopped the fight, and it was just very close, but just before the midway point in the second round, and an unbelievable upset. It's not to the extent of upsets in terms of, and I'm going to mention this specifically, Brennan, because it's NFC Championship week, the Giants knocking off the Packers in 2007. But it's a significant...
You sent me the meme earlier this week. It was completely unwarranted.
Brennan, this is all I have. This is all I have. Anyway, I have to go back to 2007. But anyway, it wasn't to the level of that, but it was a huge upset. A lot of people had money on McGregor. 98% of the money bet in that fight was on McGregor in some form. And Poirier not just, went the distance or, it was a split decision, won the fight outright after losing 6 years ago to Conor McGregor in a fight that was really not even a contest. Poirier, a very interesting character. I read up on him leading up to the fight, and he is from Louisiana, as I mentioned, a tough upbringing, and someone who really, he couldn't stay in the school system. He dropped out, got towards fighting, and he always enjoyed fighting as a younger kid, but pursued it as a passion, pretty much out of necessity, and pretty much is a guy who's always seeking validation. After his first UFC title win, he looked at his trainer and he said, that he finally deserves it. He finally made something of himself. It was someone who was pretty much wanting validation because he didn't have a father figure in his life for his life. He was seeking that, and not that I'm proud that he got it. You should seek validation in yourself, not to go too deep here, but Poirier, it was a pretty impressive win. I was rooting for him secretly. I did not put any money on him. As I said, the smart people, or not the smart people, but the
your money where your mouth is, John. Let's go.
Yeah, no, well, exactly. But the majority of the smart sharks were going with McGregor, and I wasn't going to put anything on this fight unless it was towards McGregor, but I luckily did not. And you look at this fight, and really an unbelievable upset. But of course, like anything, you want to see what's next. And it's interesting for both sides because Poirier is now, I would say, the number one contender for Khabib Nurmagomedov. I think I got that right. I usually just call him Khabib. His championship title, but Khabib recently retired. And looking at Brennan's face, I missed that. But I missed the name. But Khabib recently retired, so it's interesting to see in the division what's next. Poirier already said he will not fight Michael Ferguson, who won last night. And so his pretty much path is open, but I would guess his next step would be for maybe an interim title or a match against Khabib, even though that's not where the money is. The money, of course, is with Conor McGregor. People will be interesting to see McGregor-Khabib again, even though really he doesn't deserve it because he lost to Dustin Poirier, who should be next in line for that. McGregor could also go to boxing and fight the likes of great Manny Pacquiao or undefeated Jake Paul. We really don't know. He could also go to the World Wrestling Entertainment. He can go to WWE if he wants. There was interest there. Sheamus, a WWE wrestler, said yesterday that he expects in the near future Conor McGregor to enter the squared circle there. So his future is pretty much what we're going to talk about. I want to hear predictions from you guys because it's really the one thing you can't nab down. We don't know with this guy. He's so unpredictable, and he's retired a couple times already in his career and come back, and he's set for life in a way. He has his successful whiskey, which is the number 2 whiskey brand in the country in terms of grossing sales. And if I can't say hey, he has kept his money and been safe about it, but he definitely has a lot of money where he could ride out on the sunset. I don't think he's a guy who's going to do that. I think he's looking for the next venture, and he's still hungry. But as you could see in yesterday's fight, maybe his heart wasn't in the UFC that much. He said yesterday after the fight that he wasn't as comfortable as he needed to be against Poirier, and he had plenty of time to train for this. And the build-up was a pretty peaceful one in which I looked at the lens that McGregor really thought that Poirier, maybe he looked over him in a way, because in a fight that he needs to gear himself up for, he talks a lot of trash talk. If you go back and watch him and Poirier in the press conference, it was as peaceful as can be. They were exchanging pleasantries pretty much, both vowing to donate to one's charity and to promote their food and drink ventures. Poirier has a hot sauce, and McGregor, of course, as I mentioned, has the alcohol. So that was interesting as well. But McGregor obviously wasn't ready, and as he mentioned, wasn't comfortable. And was it a lack of desire or just overlooking an opponent? That's remained to be seen. But I want your guys' thoughts. McGregor is as unpredictable as a character as it gets. Where do you think he's going? What's next? Dan, we'll start with you.
Well, I don't know if Conor knows what's next after a fight like that, but I think that he's probably going to try and go to the UFC again. And I think he can definitely win again. You know, he's a great fighter, but the year is 2021, and he's been fighting since he's 18. Conor McGregor is 32 now. So, to be a relevant fighter for more than a decade is really hard. You don't see too many people that can do that. I'm not saying Conor isn't one of those people, but as they say, Father Time is undefeated. You know, he's getting up there, and unfortunately, that may be the reason why he doesn't have a ton left in the tank. If he doesn't, I don't know. Maybe he does have a few more wins left in him. But I think UFC is the smartest bet with him. What I hope he does is he goes to boxing and he beats the crap out of that Jake Paul. Just wipe the floor with that guy. I don't sports bet. I would bet my entire mortgage on him beating that guy. You think that a professional fighter is going to lose to a YouTuber? Are you crazy? I would bet McGregor with all the money that I have. I wish that would happen. Oh, I want it to happen. Just for all of these people who think that he's a relevant fighter to see how dumb this whole thing is. I hope, that McGregor can take his multiple round experience against Mayweather into the ring against a guy who makes YouTube videos. But we'll see where it goes with Conor. Either way, I'll be tuned in. I want to see where he goes next.
Yeah, I think I just had I posted some theoretical questions last week. John, I don't know if you appreciated that or not. I'm going to pose another one. Who runs the world?
Girls? Isn't that the song?
No, it's money.
Sorry.
Money runs the world. Yeah, so I know. I hate disagreeing with Beyonce, but what are you going to do? Money runs the world. I think Conor McGregor is going to follow the money. And the money right now is in boxing. I don't think you get as many pay-per-view wins or as much pay-per-view money in a UFC match as you do in a boxing match. Obviously, he was one of the top, a few years ago, he was one of the top, I think, 5 earnings getters of all professional athletes in any sport. And that's simply because of one fight. So I think that he follows the money. I do think he ends up fighting Jake Paul at some point. I think he kicks the snot out of him. I don't think that's really up for debate at this point. But I think he's going to follow the money. The money is in his whiskey, which, John, as you mentioned, is number 2 best-selling whiskey in the world right now. And I think he grows that even more. I think that getting his name out there is huge. Even though he lost, people are still talking about Conor McGregor. Here we are, not talking about Dustin Poirier the day after. We're talking about Conor McGregor. So the fact that he just fought does very, very well for his brand. And I think his brand is going to be trying to make as much money as possible in the next, I don't know, maybe 3, 4, 5 years while he still has his athletic ability. Is it as high as it was 4 years ago, or 6 years ago, 7 years ago, whatever it was when he last fought Poirier? I keep pronouncing the R. I took Spanish in high school, not French. Is it as high as it was 7 years ago? No, absolutely not. And on the decline. We see that with athletes when they get into their mid to high 30s. He's not going to have a lot of years left to make money athletically. So I think he's going to try and do that as much as possible in the next few years. And that goes to boxing. I turned to what Khabib said yesterday right after the fight. He tweeted, "This is what happened when you change your team, leave your sparring partners who made you a champion and sparring with little kids. Far from reality." And John, it goes back, you said earlier about the fact that McGregor wasn't the same McGregor that he was the last time he fought Poirier. He wasn't talking trash. He wasn't hyping himself up. It was very respectable. And I respect that as someone who watches, but that's not what gets you into the mode if you're Conor McGregor to go in and win a fight. I think he goes back to that. I think he goes to boxing. I think he fights as many money fights in the boxing ring as possible. And I think he makes a lot of money.
And in terms of the Jake Paul, Logan Paul thing we were talking about with the YouTubers, Logan Paul is set to fight Floyd Mayweather in February, and Jake Paul is going to fight in April against an unannounced opponent. Could that be Conor McGregor? Remain to be seen there. Next thing we'll talk about, and this is a very interesting topic, and before we start it, there has been breaking news reported by John Heyman in the baseball world. I'm going to wait, Brennan, and I think this is the right call because John Heyman and Ken Rosenthal, no knock at them, they're amazing at their job, but we're wrong about George Springer going to the Blue Jays. So until there's more confirmed sources, we won't talk about who the Yankees got officially. Of course, you can go on Twitter and see for yourself, and we may include it in this segment just because more sources will come out, but don't want to deviate from what we have going forward, but we will talk about it if we think it's confirmed. So we'll talk right now about our hypothetical Baseball Hall of Fame ballots. The Baseball Hall of Fame 2021 class will come out this Tuesday, January 26th. And it's interesting in terms of a lot of layers because it could be a year in which there is no representatives from the 2021 class due to the voting percentages, and because writers know that there is a class no matter what because the 2020 class, because of COVID-19, did not go in That class included Derek Jeter and Larry Walker, so they will be coupled with the 2021 class if anyone is actually added to it. And we decided we come up with our hypothetical ballots because there's some baseball writers out there, you could look because they all make them public, or for the most part, most of them do. Some people didn't vote for anybody. Some people voted for 2 people, 3 people. Some voted for the maximum of 10 players to go into the Baseball Hall of Fame. We wanted to give our hypothetical ballots and our reasoning behind them, and I thought it'd be an interesting segment because even though we are Baseball Writers of America Association members, we have our thoughts on it, and I know that we're all passionate about baseball and especially the Hall of Fame, and it's easily, and people could, you can disagree in the comments below in the chat. I think Baseball Hall of Fame is the most fun you have talking Hall of Fame in terms of debating players back and forth just because of its long history and its voting system. So I'll go with my ballot first. The first one up's not going to be popular amongst people, not for on-the-field stuff, but for off-the-field stuff. But Curt Schilling's a Hall of Famer. I'm sorry. I know he said some controversial things, and I understand people not liking him. That's life. And am I going to say that he's a good person? Would I say people should look up to him? No, I'm not going to say that. But are there people who are not good people who are Baseball Hall of Famers and will continue to be in the next coming years? Yes. That's just the way it works. Curt Schilling, all-time, a 2.23 postseason ERA, and that was in 19 postseason games. 3-time World Series champion, a World Series MVP in 2001, and 17 of those 19 postseason games, he was above 34 years old. Just that alone, Curt Schilling's a Hall of Famer. He's been on the ballot 9 years because of the controversial things he said, and those are the consequences of it, where regularly he should be maybe first or second ballot, in my opinion. He's waited a long time. This class is one that there's not a lot of guys to talk about. You put Curt Schilling in the Hall of Fame. May not be popular, but that's what I believe. Now we'll go to a second guy, and this is someone who I'm putting on for the first time. I haven't really advocated for this guy before, but I listened to some people and their thoughts on it, and they believed that it was true, that he was a Hall of Famer. And this guy is Billy Wagner. Billy Wagner is a Hall of Famer in my opinion. I'm going to give you 2 pitchers and their stats. Okay, you have a 7-time All-Star, a 2-time Rolaids Relief Award winner, a 28 WAR, an All-Star at 41, and a career ERA of 2.87. That's the first guy. Second guy, 7-time All-Star, 1-time Rolaids Relief Award winner, a 27.7 wins above replacement, an All-Star at 38 years old, which was his last season in Major League Baseball, and a career ERA of 2.31. That's lower. Guess which one's the Hall of Famer? The first option, A, that's Trevor Hoffman. B was Billy Wagner. I understand why people put Hoffman in first because Hoffman has 601 career saves, which is only second to Mariano Rivera, and Billy Wagner's a little lower on that list. But that's because Billy Wagner didn't have great teams that Trevor Hoffman did. And if you want to talk about Hoffman in the clutch moments, which obviously he's had multiple 50 save seasons, he never performs in the postseason, Trevor Hoffman. He's in the Hall of Fame. His one big moment was the 1998 World Series against the New York Yankees where he appeared in 1 game, 1 save opportunity, and he blew it. That's in the Hall of Fame. Why not Billy Wagner? He's only in his, he's in his 6th year on the ballot, and his numbers continue to go up, but not close to getting into the Hall of Fame for this season. And why? You gave Mariano unanimous. Trevor Hoffman's a Hall of Famer. Wagner's not so down on that list. Is he better than those 2 guys? No. But Billy Wagner is a Hall of Famer in my opinion. Now, Mets fans probably like that pick. They're not going to like this next one, and that one is Scott Rowland of the primarily of the St. Louis Cardinals. Scott Rowland's a Hall of Famer. He just is. You look at his career stats, right, and comparing it to other third basemen in history. He's 10th in WAR for a third baseman, and everyone else in that top 11 is in the Hall of Fame. His .281 batting average is better than Mike Schmidt, Eddie Matthews, Brooks Robinson, and Ron Santo. And you want to compare him to Ron Santo directly, who's a Hall of Famer and he got in because of the Veterans Committee? He's better than Ron Santo in everything. So Scott Rowland should be a Hall of Famer. People like to point out his career postseason batting average is .220. Understandable. But in the World Series against the Detroit Tigers, he batted .421 and had a home run. Scott Rowland performed when it mattered most. Okay, he didn't have a great NLCS against the New York Mets in 2006. But he performed in the World Series in the most valuable time. Scott Rowland is also a great defender. He's an 8-time Gold Glove winner. to keep Scott Rowland out, and he's only on his 4th year in the ballot, and the numbers are continuing to go up for him, it's ridiculous. Scott Rowland, and especially in this class, is a Hall of Famer. And if he doesn't get in this class, the next ones that are coming may continue to lower him, and it'd be unfortunate because up there with all the other third basemen is Scott Rowland. Did I watch him and think he was a Hall of Famer? No. But you look at his numbers, and Scott Rowland is definitely a Hall of Famer. All right, Brennan, you want to go next with your ballot? And I'm getting more word on this Yankees trade that looks like it's becoming more and more official. Brennan, you could take it if you want, and also your Hall of Fame thoughts for 2021.
Is that it for your Hall of Fame?
Yeah. Yes. 3 people. That's it. And 3 people. I don't need 10. If Brennan has 10, that's fine. But I don't need – and the one conclusion, and we'll obviously get to Dan and Brennan's thoughts, they're going to have roids guys. I don't got no roids guys on mine. All right? No steroids in my Baseball Hall of Fame. Brennan, go.
Okay. I got 10. I'm going to be honest.
Oh, my
I absolutely
goodness.
have 10.
Who is it, Torrey Hunter?
If I got a ballot, I'm no, but he is 11.
Oh my God.
So going through, I mean, you mentioned the guys. I do have Schilling on my list as well. I do think he played baseball at a high enough level to make the Hall of Fame, and that's where I'm going to leave it. That's the last thing I'm going to say about that. The 2 other obvious guys, well, I'm going to say 4 other guys that I think should make the Hall of Fame. Bonds, Clemens, Sheffield, and Ramirez. I think all 4 of them played at a high enough level that they should get in. When you look at the stats, I mean, I like to look at the stats, adjusted ballpark OPS plus. I mean, the second highest OPS plus, other than Barry Bonds, is Manny Ramirez at 154, and no one's really close to that. Sheffield is at 140, so the top 3 guys in OPS plus, I think that they should make the Hall of Fame. I think we can't look at counting stats anymore the same way that we did in the past. I think all 4 of them should be in. Obviously, they're roids guys, but the decade in which they played, players weren't encouraged to take steroids, but they weren't told not to either. The commissioner of the MLB saw them taking steroids and said, I'm going to look the other way. Who cares? I think that the steroid era is going to be in the future equivalated to the, I don't think that's a word, is going to be looked at in the same way as the juice ball era that we're going through now, where stats are inflated higher than they would be in the 80s and the 70s. So I think that all 4 of them make the Hall of Fame. I do have Scott Rowland as well. I think he's a very good player. I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Omar Vizquel I have on my Hall of Fame ballot as well. I am all for defensive-minded players, and he is the defensive-minded player. I think you can make it in the Hall of Fame off of your glove alone, and I think he does that. Other guys, Billy Wagner, I think should be in the Hall of Fame. Same thing with Andrew Jones. Andrew Jones, I just talked about defensive-minded players. Andrew Jones is another defensive-minded player who had some skill with the bat. I think it said he patrolled center field just about as well as anybody, and I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I put him on the ballot now. Does he make it now? Obviously not. Will he make it eventually? Yes. And then my last guy is going to be Andy Pettitte. Pettitte, another quote-unquote steroid guy, not as big as the other guys, but I think he makes it in off of his playoff appearances alone. Won a lot of rings with the Yankees in the early 90s, and then obviously in 2009 as well. Didn't pitch as well in the regular season as he did in the postseason, but I think as far as postseason pitchers go, he is top probably 3 postseason pitchers of all time, and for that reason alone deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. So that's my 10. Schilling, Bonds, Clemens, Sheffield, Ramirez, Vizquel, Rowland, Wagner, Pettitte, Jones.
By the way, before Dan, you jump in, Pettitte, quote-unquote, and I'm a Yankees fan, quote-unquote, underline that. He's a steroid user, not quote-unquote. He took roids. Okay. Dan, keep going.
Not as much as the other guy.
Oh, not as much. Only a little. Only a little. He's a roid user.
Yeah, well, I mean, in my life, I grew up as a Red Sox fan. I could say the same thing about Big Papi, so we don't have to get into that today, do we? As far as the Hall of Fame goes, I think that the debate is, where do you stand on the steroid era, especially for our time right now? I think it comes from 2 camps. Which way you think? Do you think the Baseball Hall of Fame is a Hall of Fame, or do you think it's a museum? And if you think it's a museum, I think you should put them in with an asterisk. And I think it's a museum. I think they should go in. If you think it's a Hall of Fame, they should stay out. And both of those answers are acceptable, and both of them are fine. I don't have an issue with either philosophy. But I would put with an asterisk, because they did cheat. I would put Clemens, Bonds. We mentioned Vizquel. I would put Pettit in this year as well. And if you want to put Ramirez in too, that's fine. I think Billy Wagner should definitely get in this year. Scott Rowland as well. I don't have any issues with that. But I think also what's really weird about this year is, as you guys mentioned, the class of 2020 is going in this year as well because of obviously the pandemic. So Derek Jeter, Marvin Miller, Ted Simmons, and Larry Walker are already also going to be going in. I think that kind of reconciles maybe the Hall of Fame not bringing in as many people. So I guess how many is that for me? I would put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I would put 7 people in if I include Ramirez. I think Wagner, like you said, you make a good case for him. And I understand wanting to put Curt Schilling in. You know, he's he was a really great pitcher. I would never vote for him. I can't reconcile little kids looking at a glorified plaque of that man for what he said. But if you want to put him in for baseball, I totally understand that, and I don't have a problem with it. But I personally would not vote for Curt Schilling.
For full context, too, Omar Vizquel has recently domestic abuse. There was an article in The Athletic that you could read on with him as well, so he has some controversy attached to him. Everyone else is pretty good besides, of course, the Roids. And before we go to the MVP of the week, we're going to talk about the recent trade. And one final note, by the way, on these Roids. If you're putting them in, if, say, Bonds and Clemens do go in, I want Sheffield in, I want Ramirez in, and I want Sosa in. Absolutely. I don't care whenever. Oh, Sosa wasn't a Hall of Famer before the Roids. Guess what? His numbers are there now, and if we're with the Roids, it doesn't matter. Put Sosa in. I don't want to hear, he wouldn't have been a Hall of Famer without the roids. Because you're right, but guess what? The steroids are in. He decided to make that choice. If we're not penalizing that choice, then put Sammy Sosa in the Hall of Fame as well. He's on this year's ballot, but not really targeting at a good enough number. Brennan, step in right now.
And Alex Rodriguez and David Ortiz are both first ballot Hall of Famers.
Yeah, and there you go. And it's such a slippery slope. I'll stay with the morally right side, even though, people might say, you have Curt Schilling in. Is that morally right? But with the roids, I stand my ground with the roids. Going forward, again, this Yankee trade is blowing up on Twitter. I'm going to get this name wrong, and people are going to be upset at it. Jameson Taillon? I think it was Taillon, right, Brennan?
Taillon.
Okay, good. All right, at least you don't have a definitive one, because yeah, I feel, but I should know these names. He's been a very good starter for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and everyone's saying on Twitter that he's going to the New York Yankees in exchange for Miguel Yajur. Oh, geez, his name's going to kill me. Rosany Contreras, Mikhail Escato, and Cannon Smith. Cannon Smith, a name I can pronounce. So Yankees giving up prospects, and Yajur is the Yankees' 15th best prospect. Contreras is the 19th rated prospect. And Brennan, you could step in. I probably butchered all those names, and I thank Jaden Becker, a viewer, for giving me the information and scouring Twitter for me. But Brennan, your thoughts on this?
Yes. So just to be a little more clear in who's going to the Pirates, Miguel Zahure, Cannon Smith.
So I got all of them wrong.
Close. Yeah, you did.
Awesome.
Rosany Contreras and Michael Escato. So some good prospects there heading to the Pirates, but the Yankees get the pitching depth that they need. Oh, I love that. He's 2 years arbitration eligible, so the Yankees are going to have control of him for the next, I believe, 3 years, and that's absolutely huge. This is a guy that has already worked with Garrett Cole for a long time. They were on the Pirates staff when they were both selected in the first round of their respective drafts. Taillon is a prior first-round, second overall pick going to the Pirates. He is a guy with a lot of potential. His fastball velocity is above average. His fastball spin rate is above average. His slider spin rate is above average as well. He's a guy that has some dominant stuff on the mound when he pitches, and that is the most important part. He was injured all of the last 2 seasons with, I believe, Tommy John. I could be wrong. It could be something else, but Tommy John sounds like it's the correct injury to be out for two seasons, including the last 60-game season. But he is a guy that is going to be so important to these Yankees, not just for this year, but I'm just very excited for the next few years. And this is a absolute huge trade for the Yankees to be able to compete in the American League. You love having 3 guys who you can rely on the mound at this point, in Cole, in Taillon, when he comes back, and then in Corey Kluber as well. So this is a huge move, and I love it.
So there you go, full retrospective on that trade, and Brennan filling us in. And I butchered all 4 names, and I'm proud of it. because that was I tried. No, in all seriousness, a good pickup for the Yankees, and now they have their pretty much three-headed monster in terms of also Kluber and, of course, Garrett Cole. So Yankees getting their pitching and going for it in the 2021 season. We'll now give you our MVPs of the week and then our picks for the NFC and AFC Championship to close out the show. And a crazy week like it is always. My MVP of the week comes from recent news. It does not involve anything we've talked about today. It goes to Jake Piazza, who's the men's basketball beat writer for the Duke Chronicle. He is a year younger than us and is a Duke University student. He asked, simple question to Coach Mike Krzyzewski, what's the next step after Duke lost to Louisville 70-65 and dropped to 5-5 on the season? What's next pretty much going forward? A good question really to ask because, hey, they're 5-5 and Coach K could have easily made a rah-rah speech there or I'm not worried. It could have been a good quote pretty much that he wanted from Coach K. Instead, Coach K asks, yeah, I'm not into looking ahead, he answers, I should say, but he's not into looking ahead. Ask the kid his major. The kid finally answers in Jake Piazza that it was an econ test, he's an econ major. So Coach K says, oh, with your econ test, you want to hear right after you finish a tough one, oh, what's next for you? Which, why are you equivalating, pretty much making a false equal is, I can't even talk right now, but equaling this question to this kid's life, like he doesn't understand basketball. Pretty much coach-splaining, I think, is the best word for this. And I think it just is at the root of the issue is that Coach K thinks who the heck he is. He thinks he's untouchable because he's won a lot of basketball games. Piazza asked a great question, a question that should be asked, and a question that I thought coaches like. All right, most of them like to break down the game at hand and talk about it, but also they like to look ahead because that's the great unknown, and you could strategize for that. To be so fixated on this one regular season game is really questionable from Coach K, and especially when you lost it. And I'm sure he addressed in that press conference that game, but the looking ahead question gives him the opportunity to build up his team a bit in Coach K, and he blew it in trying to, I guess, school the kid and Jake Piazza for no reason, which made no sense. But Jake Piazza is my MVP of the week because he asked a good question, and unfortunately, Coach K was being a jerk to him, and it's ridiculous. But he gained a lot of Twitter followers in Piazza out of it, so I guess, you take it with what you will there. Brennan, your MVP of the week for this week.
Yeah, screw that guy, right? Coach Krzyzewski, second college basketball coach of all time.
Yeah.
Dan, you know who the number one is, right?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Also, before we get off college basketball, because mine is not college basketball related, Syracuse is ranked 18th in this week's BPI rankings with number 19 overall offense, number 26 overall defense. So keep that in mind. Keeps going on a run. My MVP of the week, and this is the only time I have ever said this in my life, and will be the only time I ever say this in my life, because they are a divisional rival of the Green Bay Packers, is the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions and Matthew Stafford came to an agreement yesterday that they would look for trade options for the veteran quarterback, and I am so, so thankful for that. Matthew Stafford has been criminally underrated as a quarterback throughout his career because the teams that he's played on have never had any chance of going anywhere in the playoffs or ever winning the Super Bowl. So for the Lions to say, we're going to look for trade options for this guy who deserves to have a ring is absolutely huge. I love it. Matthew Stafford has become the Jerome McGinley of the NFL. If you don't know who that is, he's the NHL player who just got traded to a bunch of different teams who were competing for the Stanley Cup a few years ago. Matthew Stafford will go out. I hope that he gets a ring at some point. That's me saying that I hope the Packers don't win the Super Bowl next year. But, hey, what are you going to do? I love Matthew Stafford. I've watched him play for pretty much my entire time watching football. Since the Packers have played him 2 times a year, he deserves better, and I'm glad that he's getting out of Detroit.
And so, finally, for my MVP this week, I was going to bring up Coach K. I'm happy you brought him up. That was really unnecessary and really wrong of him to do. Just be nice. Be nice to the person before you're a basketball coach, please. It's not that hard. Really randomly, I think my MVP has to be Deshaun Watson because he said he wants to go to the Jets. Like, what? I got a text from someone who I know locally who was like, "Oh, you hear Deshaun Watson wants to go to the Jets?" And I was like, "Good one." And then I looked it up and I was like, "This guy wants to go to the Jets." I don't know if I fully understand it, even living here my entire life, but there is this this glorification of New York sports in the city. And I'm not saying it's unwarranted, but I'm saying that it exists and it's real. And that athletes and people want to know what's going on with the Knicks when they stink, with the Jets when they're terrible. People want to go there. And it's still, as much as I want to say it doesn't exist to myth, it still exists for Deshaun Watson to want to go to the Jets. So I can't wait to see if he actually does. And I think that he needs to have some kind of test done to see if there's anything wrong with his head for wanting to go to this team. But he wants to do it, so he's my MVP.
Yeah, I would like Deshaun Watson to maybe go to the NBA players and tell them, how great New York is, because they don't seem to get the message unless it's in Brooklyn. But that is our MVP of the weeks. I think we picked some pretty good ones and ranging from all sports in terms of where we went. And 2 quarterbacks, which I don't think in back-to-back segments we've had, but we have done it here today. So now finally, to close out the show, our thoughts on the AFC and NFC Championship games. We touched on it in the first 20 minutes of this show, and you can go back and listen there about these games. But now it is pick time, and we're going to start with the NFC Championship, and we're going to start with Brennan's Packers, and we know where he's going with this. I'll start with this game. I'm going to be very brief, and I think it's the battle of 2 quarterbacks. I know everyone looks at that, and I know quarterbacks aren't on the field at the same time, so maybe it's overvalued. But this is just a game between 2 quarterbacks. Brady, Rodgers, both great in the postseason. Brady, of course, better. But in this game, it's going to be Aaron Rodgers. The Packers' weapons will be just too much for Tampa Bay's defense. And in a close one, I would say a touchdown game, a 6-point game, the Green Bay Packers advance to the Super Bowl. It will be Rodgers' second Super Bowl that he goes to. I'm picking the Green Bay Packers, and not putting it officially, but the over looks interesting in this game as well. Dan, your thoughts on Green Bay versus Tampa?
I got the Packers as well. I think they're the better team. I think they've been the better team all season. I think that Brady has really been great in these playoffs so far, but I think the smart money for sure is with the Packers, and I think they're definitely the smart pick today. Like I said, they're overall a very, very solid team.
Oh, man. Let's see. Where do I start? Yeah, I'm going to go with the Packers, if that was a surprise to anybody. Like I said earlier, I think it comes down to the offensive lines. I think the Packers are a stronger team in pretty much every position group except for maybe linebacker, middle linebacker, outside linebacker. I think the Packers are even a step better. That being said, I think that Tom Brady is a legend. He is the GOAT. I will not dispute that. Strictly due to the winning. If I'm going to call Derek Jeter the GOAT, I'm going to have to call Tom Brady the GOAT as well, because it comes a lot from the championships. So I think Tom Brady is probably the greatest quarterback of all time. I think he keeps it close, but I think that this game is going to be low scoring. So John likes the over. I like the under in this one, to be honest. Packers win, but it's close. 27-21 Green Bay.
Like a 6-point game, like I said, but we disagree on the over-under. Now to the AFC Championship. Buffalo Bills versus the Kansas City Chiefs, 640. A huge game, the biggest game in Dan's lifetime. Yeah, this is it. This is the game. Bills, Chiefs, again, biggest game of Dan's lifetime. And unfortunately for Dan, I'm going with the Chiefs. Or maybe fortunately, because I'm not that great at picking games. I think, again, Patrick Mahomes, if he's 100%, which I think he is, there's no reason to indicate he's not, based on what he's done in practice, and he's cleared concussion protocol. Kansas City at home, the offense is going to be too much. I think Travis Kelce is a mismatch for Buffalo's defense. He's going to exploit them and have a 2-touchdown game once again like he did in the regular season. And Kansas City is going to edge out Buffalo. And it is a 3-point spread right now. I would be weary of that because Buffalo is going to play it close. And this is, as Dan has alluded to earlier, the biggest game for young Buffalo fans in their lifetime, and for every player in that locker room, the closest they've gotten to a Super Bowl. So they're not going to go down with a whimper. It's going to be a close game till the very end, but the Chiefs will advance to their 2nd consecutive Super Bowl and just out-edge the Bills. Brennan, your thoughts on Chiefs versus the Bills?
Dan, you picked the Packers. And with that, I'm going to pick the Bills. I think
Wow.
the Bills win this game. It's not the only reason. That's I was thought out. I didn't know Dan was going to pick it. It's whatever. I think the Bills win this game. I really do. I think that the Chiefs have struggled to cover this season. They have not beat really any team that they've played by a lot of points. And I think that if it gets down to who can score more points, that's really a toss-up, I think. I think the Bills' offense is very, very good. I think the Chiefs' offense is very, very good. I think the Bills are going to be able to take this one. I really do. I think, again, it'll be close. I think this one does end up being a shootout. I think there are a lot of points scored in this game. As far as the score prediction, I'm going to say I think the Bills – the spread's only 3.5 at this point. The Bills are going to cover absolutely. With a win, they cover. I'm going to say 38-35. Bills win.
So, I can't pick the Chiefs wearing all of this stuff. In my life, I've only put one sports bet, and for it to become true at Turning Stone Casino, the Bills win the 2021 Super Bowl this year. They need to win today. At the Turning Stone Casino, as you can see, folks, I have the Bills as the champion of the Super Bowl.
3,000.
Wow.
I did that. So, I mean, if I'm gonna get some cash, I need the Bills to win. So I got to take Buffalo. That's the one sports bet I've done in my life, as I mentioned. I will admit, if you are trying to make a lot of money on this game, the Chiefs are at home, they're the defending champs. You might want to go with them. But to say the Bills are going to win, I don't think it's outrageous. I think they're a really good team. I think it's going to be a close one regardless. So, I kind of have to take the Bills, don't I? I think I should.
And those are our thoughts on the NFC and AFC Championship. If you have a minute, or I guess 5, go on Dan's Instagram, Twitter, at Danny the Man EP, I believe on both accounts. He had put up a video of his thoughts his pretty much a collection of his thoughts from when he was a little kid on the Buffalo Bills throughout the years. It was JPI TV Productions that he worked for a long time. And Dan gives you some great takes in there. My favorite being Fred Jackson and Ryan Fitzpatrick may be the path for a Bills Super Bowl championship. But all that false hope and that optimism that was squashed could all be ended today if the Buffalo Bills advance to the Super Bowl. And Brennan as well, good luck to your Packers. That's what we're rooting for here on the show, a Bills versus Packers Super Bowl. And of course, if it is, this is your one-stop shop for the preview and breakdown of that Super Bowl and whatever the matchup is if it isn't those two teams. So for Dan Passante and Brennan Miller, I'm John Vicari. This has been the MVP Show.